Voters across Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland cast their votes on Thursday and delivered their verdicts on the parties vying to govern a total 10.4 million people. Their fates are sealed, and tonight we find out who will be occupying the top jobs in Holyrood, the Senedd, and Stormont. In Scotland, classical Liberal leader Dunk Sullivan is hoping to displace the Greens from government for the first time in nearly 2 years. In Wales, First Minister Wagbo is looking to hold on to his job, with his WLA Labour government hoping to keep their majority. And in Northern Ireland, the traditional state of things looks set to change as Labour and the Irish Parliamentary Party attempt to become the main other and nationalist forces for the first time. We'll keep you on top of all the twists and turns on an exciting election night. I'm Guardian Editor in Chief Will Shakespeare 99, and I will be guiding you through this evening alongside Sky News political editor Webrew_M.
Thank you very much, Will, and good evening, everyone. Yes, tonight is set to be an exciting night for the Devolved Nations as we get our results. Now, if you've been paying attention to the lovely text screen given by Comped, you will see that we have exit polls on our way, but we have three constituencies to watch this election, and they have been. You'll be able to see a little bit on that on the Guardian website as well. Well, you posted something there, but
Yes.
in Scotland, I've decided to choose the Highlands and Islands, and I don't know, maybe that's a little bit of bias from me, I admit.
Wow.
But I think the story of the Greens vacating that seat, backing the Lib Dems, and really the fight between them and the Classical Liberals should be exciting. It should be a close one. Um, it's a very hotly contested seat, and in Wales, there's a tight three-way race between First Minister Wagbo, PJR, and from the Welsh Conservatives, and the Plaid Cymru leader Victor in that seat. And then in Northern Ireland, of course, the story being, will there be a new nationalist force? Who knows? We shall see. But let's jump into the exit polls.
Yes.
So first up, we have the Wales YouGov Guardian predictions. They say that the Welsh Liberal Alliance are sitting on 4 seats, Welsh Labour on 2, Plaid Cymru on 2, and Conservatives on 1. What do you make of it?
Well, I think that's a very good result for Wagbo. If right, his government re-elected with exactly the same majority as before. Bad news for Plaid Cymru, who lose a seat under that projection, and a good result for the Welsh Conservatives. The Libertarians will be disappointed to have missed out, however.
Yeah, it seems like it's all well and done.
Hello?
Yeah, it seems like it's all well and done, really, for the Liberal Alliance. They seem to be set to hold. Perhaps this is kind of justification for the government. There was obviously the first Parliament. We had so many people leaving.
Yeah.
So everything was just
It was a bit chaotic for the first couple of months of
yeah.
the assembly.
It was Wales leaving and the Plaid Cymru and all knows if. But it seems that the stability has been rewarded.
And the campaign in Wales has been dominated by the record of the government. The Welsh Liberal Alliance's campaign was built almost entirely around their record, their manifesto. Every page of it had what they'd done and what they're going to do going forward. So it was the dominant issue. It was very much a referendum on the government and on Wagbo's performance as First Minister. And if this exit poll is right, then the people of Wales have cast a very favourable verdict.
Yes. Let's jump to the next one. We have the Northern Ireland YouGov Guardian projection, which sees the Ulster Unionists sitting on 4 MLAs, the Labour Party of Northern Ireland on 2, the Alliance Party on 2, Sinn Féin on 2, the Irish Parliamentary Party on 1, and the DUP on 0. So interesting that the IPP are sitting on 1 as a relatively new force in Northern Ireland.
Very, and I think if we're going to compare the two countries, where Wales has their results, if the exit polls are correct, of course, suggests that the status quo is going to prevail. The opposite is true in Northern Ireland, where it looks as though things are about to change, with the Labour Party in Northern Ireland going up to 2 for the first time ever, perhaps tying with Alliance to be the largest other force, and the Irish Parliamentary Party challenging Sinn Féin as the nationalist party in Stormont. Then these two races look to be very, very different.
Yeah, and again, some controversy in Northern Ireland when there was the merging of the Alliance Party and the Classical Liberal Party of Northern Ireland, which the Sinn Féin Party was really up in arms about.
There was, and talking about controversy, another key point that could really have played into this result, the fact that the Irish Parliamentary Party now have one MLA, well, look to have one MLA according to this exit poll, is the advert that Sinn Féin put out towards the very end of the campaign that contained music that was seen to have glorified the IRA. That could have turned off a lot of moderate nationalist voters and could have been the key reason that we've now looked to have an IPP MLA.
Yeah, exciting times. The IPP candidates, all very well known, I think, throughout the British political scene and the Northern Ireland political scene.
Yeah, Trevism.
Yeah,
Very well known
especially.
figure.
So we will see how that goes. And in Scotland, we have the classical Liberals and the Greens on equal footing for the first time. We have the Scottish Conservatives on 3, Scottish Labour on 3, Scottish Libertarians on 2, and the Scottish Liberal Democrats on 1, with the newly formed Social Democrats still unable to pick up a seat.
And as you can see on this exit poll, there's squares on either side of the results. The squares on the left indicate the number of constituency seats, and the squares on the right indicate the number of list seats. So we're projecting that the Scottish Greens are going to win 4 constituencies on 1 list, the Classical Liberals 3 constituencies and 2 lists, the Conservatives 1 constituency and 3 lists, Scottish Labour 1 constituency and 3 lists, and the Libertarians 1 constituency and 1 list, with the Liberal Democrats then picking up their 1 seat from the list.
Yeah, and for the first time, the Klebs and the Greens are on equal footing. You know,
Yes.
we always look at like how do we coalition to bring in the next government. You could talk about a TLC government, you could talk about a broad right government. There's so many possibilities with this. Although again, remember this is just an exit poll.
If that exit poll is correct, then I would say the overwhelming bookies' favourite would be Dunks 11 to be First Minister, because the Classical Liberals plus the Conservatives plus the Libertarians equals 10, which is the magic number.
Yeah. Wow. Could see Butte House changing for the first time.
For the first time in almost 2 years. It was July 2017 that the Greens came to power.
Yeah, with the TLC government ran for 2, and then we had the Greens in the SNP and the Greens on their own with Labour, and now we're here.
Yeah. It'll be the first time that there's been a centre-right government in Scotland ever.
Yeah.
Since the start of devolution in 1999.
So yes, we are expecting our first result in about 3 to 4 minutes.
That's Angus, Perth and Stirling, if I'm correct.
Absolutely correct, yeah. Which, I mean,
it's basically a foregone conclusion to be a close seat. That is the seat of Classical Liberal leader Dunks 11, who we expect to overwhelmingly win. He's in a one-on-one fight with the Green candidate, with the Libertarians and the Conservatives endorsing him and Labour endorsing his Green opponent.
Yeah, endorsements have played a huge factor in Scotland, and I think across, well, particularly Scotland, because there's more constituencies, but between Wales and Scotland, endorsements have been big. You know, I talked about in the intro the Liberal Democrats looking, in fact, they were being endorsed in Highlands and Islands by the Greens and the Scottish Conservatives, which are 2 completely different parties, endorsing the centre ground.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just that Weber makes the best deals.
The other key thing with endorsements, of course, is that the Scottish Greens have endorsed Scottish Labour in several seats, and that's been quite important, as I've written in the Guardian article put out just minutes ago, in that one of the key features of this campaign has been about getting the Scottish Greens out, and Labour has seemed to just be, voting Labour has seen to just be a vote for the Scottish Greens, with every constituency Labour standing in having Green endorsements.
Well, that's a great point. So, in about 2 minutes' time, we will have our first result. In the meantime, should we talk about guests, maybe? Or do you want to take a look and see if we can get some guests?
Yeah, should we bring someone in?
This is the point where things collapse. Do you know who's a pair of safe hands? I think Vitiate is a pair of safe hands. He's always about.
Should we bring him in?
We try drag him in, see if things work. Now, door jokes are banned, so don't even think about it.
What if the door doesn't work?
Then I can do it, I think. Vitiate, the Classical Liberal Deputy Leader, Standing In Leader. How are you?
I am very well, thank you very much. How about you?
Yeah, very good. Are you excited for these results?
Well, by looking at just the exit polls, it looks to be a very good night for The classical liberals, as you said, changing Butte House for the first time since Holyrood's been reinstated, and also the first, it could be the first classical liberal-led government.
Well, actually, we can give you your first result in Angus, Perth, and
Oh,
Stirling. We have Dunks 11 with a turnout of 79%, sitting on 275,000 votes against the Green candidate, the Emil R. Best. That was a kind of obvious foregone conclusion, let's be honest. The leader of the Classical Liberal delegation in Scotland taking their seat.
I can give you the percentages for that seat. That is 41.5. Sorry, that's the wrong result. 72.6% for Dunks 11, with 27.4% for the Greens.
well, it was like you said, it was a foregone conclusion. It is a classical liberal safe seat, which yeah, I feel like if I think it should set a trend for the rest of the night, hopefully, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's over 70% of the vote. It's such a safe seat for the Classical Liberals, endorsed by both the Conservatives and the Libertarian Party. It's, there's no surprises there. No wonder that this was the first result. But
Can I just interject?
Of course.
So
Some people are asking whether the squares at the top of the bar charts represent endorsements, and they do.
Yes.
I also want to point out that one of the Greens, I think it was MG, said he was going to stand in this seat, and it's interesting to see that he's chickened out of doing so. Clearly, he sees that the politics in Scotland is changing to rather than the Greens' general consensus of failure across the term, they're coming to more towards the classical liberals' message of a brighter future for Scotland.
In your opinion.
Of course.
There have been some large controversies towards the last couple of months regarding the Scottish Greens, but you could also argue, there have been a lot of anger towards Westminster. Without a budget, they've really been restricted on how they can actually operate as a government.
Yes, there's also been a lot of anger towards the towards Westminster, but there's always going to be anger towards Westminster because that's just the basic. That's just the basis. However, there are some things which have to be laid at the feet of the Green Party, or the Greens, i.e. the case in the Supreme Court where the Greens were ruled to have acted unlawfully by their omission to lay a draft order before the Scottish Parliament. Stuff like that can only be laid at the feet of the Greens.
Well, obviously, looking at our exit poll, some percentage of the electorate agrees. We have a tweet from the newly re-elected Dunks. Says, delighted to be re-elected in Angus, Perth and Stirling with a massive 73% of the vote. I'd like to thank all my constituents for putting their faith in me for another term.
Well deserved.
And I caught Jasmine there tweeting shitebag before deleting it.
Yes,
You can't swear on national television.
Oh,
it's
past 7
Twitter
o'clock.
mod team are on it.
I think that was more Jasmine than anyone else.
Oh, maybe.
And a callback to, I believe it was Ice Cream Sandwich 401 who tweeted that unionists are shitebags. I believe I was First Minister at the time.
We're going to have so many Ofcom complaints after.
Ofcom are going to be all over us.
No, you're going to be getting complaints from head office soon.
Yeah, well, we have our next result, which is round 1 in Northern Ireland.
Oh.
Here it is. We have our first candidate elected, which is Trevisan with 82,000 votes, and the candidate for the IPP has been elected in round 1.
And here, I think I totally agree with you earlier. It is a very interesting result because he is a relatively new relatively new force in Northern. Well, he's not a new figure. The part IPPR, a new force in Northern Ireland, and so this is a very interesting result, and I think it's a very good result for Trev. And I wish him well.
There's some things that really need to be noted from the first round results. First of all, is the fact that the UUP have far fewer first preference votes than the poll suggested they would. They've got
Interesting.
39.23% of first preferences. The last poll published before the campaign said they would get 47%, which is
Well,
a very significant difference.
yeah. Are you surprised by
there
the
was
amount of candidates that the Alliance Party put out?
No, I'm not, because I mean, when you combine the Liberal Democrats, the Alliance before and the classical Liberals in Northern Ireland, you have, a fairly big party. So it makes sense that they had that many. I think Labour's going to be absolutely cock a hoot that they've narrowly pipped the Alliance Party to the post to be the second largest party and the second largest other party in Northern Ireland now, with 18.64% of the vote to 18.07. Sinn Féin narrowly holding on to largest nationalist party status.
I think, unfortunately for Sinn Féin, this drop has been is follows what I consider to be very questionable behaviour, certainly within the last few months. And I think the electorate are responding to that to say, oh, if you cannot behave properly, why should we vote for you in the first place?
Yeah, very exciting first round. Now,
Many of the same issues facing Sinn Féin are the same issues facing the Scottish Greens.
Certainly.
yeah, we have obviously Trev is making comments on the other the text stream. So if you want to have a look at what Trev is saying, he's talking in an interview with Comped there, so you can get his immediate thoughts as that election result comes out. In the meantime,
One of the things.
sorry, on you go. No, on you go.
Just another quick point. One of the things that really stands out for me here from this first result, besides what I've already mentioned, is how good a campaign the Alliance Party have run. They were polling before the campaign started. They were polling at 14%. Now they've got 18.07%. So that's a significant increase. They've closed the gap with the Labour Party, and it would seem that a lot of that has actually come from the UUP, which is not something you'd expect being from different communities.
Yeah.
The Labour Party's drop has been very small, whilst the Ulster they were at 19.1% at the last poll, so it's a very small drop. Whereas the Ulster Unionists have dropped nearly 8 points.
Before we go on, we have our next result in North Wales, I believe.
Ooh, love a good
This is
Welsh result.
North Wales. The Welsh Liberal Alliance holds Saunders 16 picking up 176,387 votes against, I always botch this name, Fine Porpoise of
Fine
the Welsh
Porpoise.
Conservatives.
I understood it's fine, porpoise.
Yes,
Yes.
I always botch that name. 108,576, and then Enfys Claw with 107,400 votes. So that's the Welsh Liberal Alliance holding in North Wales.
Obviously, a good result for the Welsh Liberal Alliance, but also a good result for the Scottish Conservatives, narrowly beating Plaid Cymru here, considering this is their first election as a standing candidates in Wales. That's a great result to come second in the very first seat.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have a tweet, from Trev, who says, "Well, I'm off to get fucking hammered. Well done to every IPP staffer, canvasser, campaigner, and spud. Good shout out. This is a victory against the sectarian consensus." Do you think there's some sort of sectarian consensus in Northern Ireland?
No. I think the atmosphere in Northern Ireland is changing for the better. I think personally there nowadays there is less emphasis on the dirty word, that being unionism. And I think people just want to make things better for the people of Northern Ireland, and I think that's what these elections matter about.
And of course, with our result in North Wales, Saunders, the former finance minister, who I believe resigned because he believed that he couldn't get a budget. I might be not getting this 100% right, but I recollect that Saunders resigned from the government as finance minister because he felt like he couldn't get a budget out.
That's my understanding of what happened as well. He was from my experience of Saunders. He was a very competent finance minister. His understanding of economics is unparalleled, and I hope to see him in Wagbo's next Welsh cabinet.
And of course, Saunders 16 is also founded the Independent Social Democrats. He's their leader, and he set a new precedent for the Welsh Liberal Alliance by getting the constitution changed so that non-Liberal Democrat and classical Liberal members could also join the Welsh Liberal Alliance.
Yes,
I think that is a very good point. He did lead the way on that, and I think at the time I was very in favour of that, because at the end of the day, if you don't want to join the national parties, but you heavily agree with the message of the Welsh Liberal Alliance, I think you should be able to to join that party and fight for what you believe in Wales.
Our next result will be in about a minute's time and will be in Glasgow, so stay tuned for that.
Which we expect will be an easy green hold.
Yes, you would think so. I mean, former First Minister. Yeah.
Yeah, ice cream sandwich 401, the one who called Unionist shitebags. Standing there. It's a relevant point. It will that might well play a role in the results, but we'll wait and see.
And actually, here comes the result in Glasgow. 61% turnout, with the Greens taking 233,505 votes. Saunders, who was standing there, 109,614. The Classical Liberal candidate on 107,311, and the Scottish Conservatives 10,132. So that is.
I can give you the percentages.
Oh yes, I wonder if he worked out the percentages and wants to get them out.
Maybe just a little bit. 50.7% for ice cream sandwich 401. For Saunders 16, a great result for the Scottish Social Democrats, coming in second here. 23.8% for them. For the Classical Liberals, it's 23.3%, and for the Conservatives, just 2.2%. So they will lose their deposit.
I was just about to say they'll probably lose their deposit.
Yes, they've lost their deposit.
That's I think, regardless of whether Saunders didn't win it, I think that's a very good result for the Scottish Social Democrats there.
And it's interesting to point out, after all the controversy, the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats endorsed Sanic in Glasgow. That's a big deal, and we actually have a tweet from Sanic who says, "I'm glad to have the endorsement of the people of Glasgow once again," with a little flag of Scotland next to the tweet. Aww. Yeah, a strong performance, nothing you would expect. Now, what's interesting is the Social Democrats had more votes than the Classical Liberals, despite the Classical Liberals being backed by the LP UK.
I fully believe that we had a strong message to send to Scotland, and unfortunately, it appears that the people of Glasgow obviously haven't been able to connect with that message. However, the Scottish Social Democrats are a good alternative, unlike the Greens.
You just had to get that in there, didn't you?
Of course I did.
Well, I think on that note, we will thank you very much, Lord Grantham, for joining us on the first stint of our broadcast.
Thank you very much. It's nice. It's been nice. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure.
And I think we can jump straight into another guest.
Yes. Who should we drag in?
I already have one picked this time. See how prepared I am?
Go on.
we have the former Scottish Liberal Democrat leader, former Deputy Prime Minister, and current member of the Social Democrats. Hopefully. Oh, you moved him in as I moved him in, and then I kicked him out.
I didn't touch it.
See, Docra, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. So how do you make the results so far?
The results so far have been a very strong showing for new parties that are going in there and saying, we don't accept the old binary dynamic, that we're going to come in there, we're going to change things, and that we don't have to accept the old party system as it was established. We've seen Trevism and the IPP win in the first round in Northern Ireland, which I think is something that not a lot of people were expecting. We've seen the Scottish Social Democrats beat the classical Liberals in the ex-First Minister's seat. If there was a seat the classical Liberals were doing well in, you think it's a seat they were basically coming under attack by their own MSP. We have shown incredibly strong showings, the entire movement of this new resurgent, more moderate force in politics in the IPP, in the Scottish Social Democrats, in the Welsh Liberal Alliance. We've shown that we're strong. We're going to keep going strong all through tonight, I reckon.
Well, we have our next result. It is round 2 in Northern Ireland, and it shows that the, I believe, DUP candidate, Elite...
Yeah, the DUP leader.
Yeah, the DUP leader has been excluded in round 2 of the... There's a little chuckle there, Doc.
It could have been. It could have been.
Yes, the DUP leader expelled.
In that round, he got just 2.14% of the vote.
Interesting, very interesting result there.
You can tell I worked out the percentages.
You little nerd. But we have also, you should pay attention in the bottom right of our graphics that were, by the way, shout out to Jordy who did the graphics. Amazing, they look amazing.
Very good graphics.
In the bottom right hand corner we have the candidates remaining. So these are all the candidates that have still to be or will be or could possibly be elected to the next assembly. Okay, so that is that. Let's go back to you, Docra. You were expelled from the Scottish Liberal Democrats. Now, I have to say this because the two of you are here. You little sniving what happened?
No comment. I refuse to comment.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, what we can say
Guardian
is
will
that...
not be commenting on what may or may not have transpired last week.
And I think that is what the press office of the Liberal Democrats said. Something on the lines of throwing the party into disrepute.
They might call it that. I wouldn't possibly comment.
Were you a saboteur in the Liberal Democrats?
I think that all parties need to crush the saboteurs, and I'm offended at that implication that I'm a saboteur, Reboot. I only did what I thought was best. I'm not going to counter-brief the party on this. I respect Dylan. I respect the party. I still have huge admiration for them. I'm not going to go on the attack now. I'm just going to say
They didn't seem to think you respected the party.
Evidently not. But I'm not going to. If they can think what they like, I still respect them. I'm not going to attack them here. We're here to talk about the fantastic election results that we're getting here. We're not here to go over old conflicts, even if they are 2 days old.
Speaking of...
Hang on, can I just ask one final question to Mr. Doctor before we move on to whatever's next?
No, because this is urgent. This is urgent.
Absolutely brutal.
We have a declaration of a recount in Highlands and Islands. Docra, this is the seat that you were standing in as the Scottish Liberal Democrat leader.
It's technically the seat I am standing in.
Well,
depending on how you view it.
Yes.
I was going to say, the question I was going to ask before we got the declaration of the recount was, do you think you're going to win your seat?
I'll be excited to win because I'll have the endorsement of the people and none of the responsibilities.
Well, of course, to clarify for people, this will go to if the seat is one, I should say, it will go to the party. Unfortunately, sorry, Doc. But we never know.
We don't know who's leading here. We're hearing it's very close. Less than 100 votes in it.
Less than 100 votes in it. Wow, that is spooky. We'll hopefully get some rumours and such. But we're already moving on straight on to our next result, which is in Lanarkshire in Scotland. This is MG from the Greens holding...
Another former First Minister.
Yep, another former First Minister with the endorsement of the TLC parties again. 341,719 votes. And again in second place, the ISD, Samuel J. Booker with 130,584 votes. And the LPUK in Scotland, Bambi Online, taking third place with only 28,000 votes.
Another stellar performance for the Social Democrats. If I can just read out the percentages of the vote for that seat in Lanarkshire. A very low turnout, only 54%.
Yeah.
The Greens have won 68.3% of the votes cast. The Social Democrats 26.1%, and the Libertarians 5.6%.
So perhaps MG looking to establish a stronghold, just like in Angus, Perth and Stirling with the Classical Liberals. How do you make of that result, Doc?
Well, you've got to give it to the Greens. They've got to make strongholds because they've got few places left to live. But the result is it shows very clearly that without any endorsements in this seat, we have managed to have an incredibly good result from a new party that only just recently formed. And when you've got the Classical Liberals, LPUK, and Conservative Party, every party that was standing in that seat on the centre right together couldn't win 29,000 votes. They didn't even get 10%. It's really shows just how pathetic some of the parties are doing in Scotland and how people aren't turning to Classical Liberals or Conservatives or LPUK for an alternative in a lot of these Green seats. They're turning to the Scottish Social Democrats, and I think they're going to continue to turn to them into the future. This is only a beginning, and I think next election we're going to see build on these already strong results, and we're going to see huge wins.
Do you know what? See, you might say that Doc has a vested interest in saying all of. He does have a very valid point, which is that that's now the second seat where the Social Democrats have come in second, again in a 3-horse race where there was another party hoping to de-seat the Greens, and they've come, and the Social Democrats have beat them, whether it be the Conservatives in the last one or the Libertarians here. But I think the other interesting point is that the Social Democrats have made a big thing about being what they call other on the Union, like in Northern Ireland. And we've seen the Union not be, I've noted this in my pieces over the last week, the Union has not been the dominant issue in this campaign as it has in previous Scottish parliamentary elections. And I think that the performances for the Social Democrats are reflective of the fact that the Union is declining in importance. That being said, however, the turnout in Lanarkshire is very interesting because it's one of those seats that I noted should be watched in terms of the votes of nationalists, where they would go, because Lanarkshire had a very narrow result in 2014, and it's very interesting that the turnout is that low and that the only out-and-out unionist candidate there has only got 28,018 votes, which would suggest that a lot of unionists, rather than a lot of nationalists staying at home, a lot of unionists stayed at home instead.
Who said we needed John Curtis? We've got our own John Curtis right here in the studio. Yeah, and this poses the final question I'll ask before our next set of results to Docra. Do you think that the ISD will pick up a list seat in Scotland? We projected them not to.
I mean, what's interesting is obviously there are 2 list regions in Scotland, unlike at Westminster, so we'll have to see what really went on in the Highland Sides to get an idea of it. But I think there's significant possibility of us gaining a list seat in really either of the regions until we get a better idea of what's going on. All I can say is it is absolutely in play, and when you've got situations like all of the centre-right parties coming together only getting 28,000 votes, clearly something's gone wrong, and maybe the list seats really are going to be in play, because you think those aren't going to contribute to a hell of a lot of list votes. If that's all they can muster at the constituency, that's not going to translate well. That's a very good sign for the Scottish Social Democrats.
Well, we have our next result. Sorry to interrupt. This is round 3 of the Northern Ireland election, and it gives a candidate elected to the UUP. FPS Lover won, 71,000 there.
That's the First Minister.
That is the First Minister, yeah. Re-elected. Thanks. Saving me. I clearly pay attention to Northern Ireland. Yeah.
I thought it was salient to note.
It is. It's pretty important. I mean, who knows? Yes. So that's the UUP First Minister re-elected, and yeah, a good
I
result.
just wanted to note on the Scotland issue, what I was going to say before we went to this result, and I still want to note it now, is that on the basis of the results so far, I would say, in terms of the exit poll, that we might be looking, instead of 2 Libertarians, 1, and the Social Democrats actually defying the exit poll to win a seat.
One LPUK, yeah, that very
Rather,
possible.
the exit poll said 2.
And that's that kind of margin
on the
for
basis
error.
of the results so far, it looks as though the Libertarians are underperforming what we would have expected.
Well, we're going to jump straight into another result. This is South Central Wales. And bloody contrary, from the Welsh Liberal Alliance has gained from Labour a massive gain, actually. 282,000. Sorry, on you go.
I was just going to say, this is an atrocious result for Labour.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
Horrific. I mean, it's terrible. It's there's no other way of spinning it. That result is absolutely devastating. In this seat at the last election, they got 122,077 votes. That was 39.5%. In this
You
election,
even worked out the percentages of the last election.
you can't say I'm not thorough. In this election, they've got just 14,000 votes here, which represents just 3.32% of the vote. They've lost their deposit here. They are now third behind the Libertarians. That should make the Welsh Labour Party very worried tonight, especially since it looked like they might gain votes on the last election and hold steady in terms of the number of seats.
A cataclysmic victory, just to go over the numbers. 282,010 for the Welsh Liberal Alliance, 139,091 for the LPUK, which were endorsed as well, and then 14,462 for the Welsh Labour Party candidate, Mr. Pieface 2. Nice name.
This is something that's becoming a trend now we're seeing, where the right-wing parties, particularly the parties currently governing in Westminster, are just, even when they're endorsing each other, running as one candidate, we're seeing here getting less than half the votes of the winner, and we saw just in Scotland a second ago a really poor result, and now in Northern Ireland a second ago as well, the UUP took until round 3 to even get a person in. That's something we've not seen in years in Northern Ireland, where the UUP's domination, where they'd get really super majority approaching numbers, that's gone. I mean, all the parties associated with the government right now getting huge backlash at the polls here. And I mean, obviously there's the Labour result as well, when call the police, someone's committed a murder. But this is a really strong result, as I said before, for that liberal, moderate, centrist, progressive voice in Scotland, in the Scottish Social Democrats, in the Welsh Liberal Alliance, and in the Irish Parliamentary Party. And while, yeah, the Greens have done quite well, but as we're seeing here, it's the success there for the moderates and the crushing blow to the right.
Speaking
Can
of
I
the
just
Greens,
inject the?
on you go.
Sorry,
We have a
go to the
result.
next result.
Yes, I was just going to say, speaking of
that's
the
more
Greens
important.
doing
Let's go to
well,
the next result.
we have a result in Edinburgh with Wired Cookie 1 taking and holding Edinburgh with 228,276 votes. The Conservative candidate Sis33 Error on 168,000, and the lovely, beautiful, gorgeous, amazing gentleman for the Scottish Liberal Democrats, Weaver, on 105,860 with 2 endorsements.
I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't have percentages for you.
Oh, yes.
The Greens have 45.45% of the vote here, the Conservatives 33.47%, and the wonderful Weebrew on 21.08%. In terms of where that is from the last election, the Greens here last time got 54.2%.
And who won that seat?
Slightly.
Who won that seat?
The Greens.
Yeah, what candidate though? That
Wired
amazing.
Cookie.
Was that you by any chance?
It was me.
Oh.
You got
Yes.
54.2% at the last election.
Yeah.
Here.
As First
And
Minister.
This election, they got 45.45%. So that's a drop of nearly 10%.
It's a drop, but it's also the fact, perhaps, that the candidate standing isn't leader of the party. You could maybe say that, personality politics comes into it quite a lot. Although you would hope then that the candidate that did win the seat would do quite well, but yeah.
not quite a good result for the Conservatives as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
They were at 19.2% at the last election, and this time around they've got 33.47%.
And not to leak internal discussions, but the Conservatives were very adamant in standing in there to boost their base in Edinburgh. So it's clearly a good electoral strategy.
Another low turnout though, 55.71%.
Yeah, I wonder why. Maybe no classical liberals, no LP UK.
I would hazard a guess that maybe a good number of perhaps yes voters stayed at home. Maybe some soft unionist votes, so people Labour who aren't standing in the seat and didn't endorse the Greens didn't turn out either.
Interesting. I mean, it wouldn't have made a difference, obviously, but
no.
Yeah. We have. Yeah, our next result will be the. Now I want to check my numbers. It's the fourth.
Round 9.
Yes, round 9. Thank you. It will be. It would be in round 9 of the Northern Ireland. That will come in a couple minutes. Now, this is a good time to talk about how the rounds work. So we don't bring you every round because some of them are pretty boring. I believe this next round will be, because we're skipping so many, there'll be a lot to talk about. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
We have a tweet from Wired Cookie One who just won.
You would hope it was a Twitter tweet,
as opposed to a Facebook tweet. No,
could be a bird.
Yes, Wired Cookie One, the candidate who just won and held the seat in Edinburgh. Glad to see the people of Edinburgh have put their faith in me and the Green Party once again, and the lovely little Scotland flag again. Although he doesn't have nitro, so it just says flag_Scot. That's a shame. Okay,
How sad.
I believe we're jumping straight into round 9.
Okay.
Here we are. So, round 9 of the Northern Ireland election. We have many candidates excluded. In fact, well, I'll let you take this one. I've been saying all the results. Here you go.
Alright, I'll take this one. So, in the last few rounds, we've seen Control Out Llama from the Alliance Party was eliminated in round 5. Esteban 06, the leader of the Liberal Democrats at Westminster, was eliminated at round 6, also for the Alliance Party. Vlad the Lad 123, deputy leader of the Liberal Democrats, eliminated for the Alliance Party in round 8, leaving the Alliance Party 3 candidates left. And then we had 2 Sinn Féin. We've got 2 Sinn Féin candidates eliminated. Half of their candidates have been eliminated. Our Glim and Answer Me Now were eliminated in rounds 4 and 7 respectively, leaving them with 2. And the Labour Party in Northern Ireland have had their first candidate excluded, with 44,736 votes in this round. We've got Le Chevalier Malfait as the top candidate, with the UUP and the Labour Party in Northern Ireland dominating the leaderboard in this round.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty big blow to the Alliance Party in Northern Ireland, who would have certainly been hoping that they could have gotten some really big players both in Northern Ireland and in the Westminster scene into Stormont. I mean, really, to get not only 3 people out, but have one of them be Esteban 06, that's really big blow to the Alliance Party. And if we really legitimately gets to the point where the Irish Parliamentary Party becomes a senior force for sort of that more moderate ground politics in Northern Ireland, then that says a lot about what's going on in the Alliance Party, and clearly what they've got working in Wales isn't really working in the Alliance Party in Northern Ireland. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations in the Liberal Alliance about that.
I would say now, on the basis of the results we've seen so far, that it is now almost certain that the Labour Party will win 2 seats in Northern Ireland, and that they will perhaps either a lead or tie with the Alliance. See how later.
Yeah, we will
now,
see.
The exit poll got it right with the Labour Party, that they're now going to have 2 seats.
Our next result will be in Ayrshire in a few minutes' time, and I believe also southwest Wales. But in the meantime,
sorry, just one more thing to note with Northern Ireland before we move on to something else.
Yes.
Is that the UUP haven't yet had any candidates Sorry, they've had one candidate elected so far. You'll remember that last time around, they got, I think it was 3 or 4 candidates elected in the first round. If it was 3, they got 3 candidates elected in the first round last time, 4th candidate in round 2, and their 5th candidate in round 3. Obviously, I think it's too early to say what that means, but it's an interesting change from last time that we're seeing that they haven't necessarily topped the poll and dominated in the same way as we saw last time. I think that's also reflected in the drop that we've seen over the course of the campaign, with their drop from the last poll to where they are now.
Doc, how do the Social Democrats fold in Northern Ireland?
Well, you're certainly going to be hearing more news very soon about that. I know there's a lot of talk floating about the place about certain parties and certain relations, which I couldn't comment because I don't want to undercut anything. But over,
Wouldn't be like you to leak anything.
Oh my god!
Well, we have a new result. I'm being told we have a result in Aberdeen.
Yeah, go to that, please, if you can.
I'm just going to double check that's not a typo. It is a typo. It is a typo on Comped's part. It is Ayrshire. I was panicking there. It is Ayrshire. This is the new Scottish, still laughing, new Scottish LP UK leader Geordie taking the seat in Ayrshire from Labour, 246,123 votes against 114,233 votes. That is big, and so many endorsements as well. Classical Liberals, Tories, Liberal Democrats against Social Democrats and the Greens. Yeah, that's a big result.
And another dreadful result for Labour as well. We've seen it in Wales where they're losing by big margins. They won this seat. Well, I won this seat at the last election with 50.4% of the vote, with the Libertarians on 29.1%. In this election, what we've seen in this result is that the Libertarians now have 68.3% of the vote, with Labour on 31.7%. Which is not a good result for Labour, especially when they have the endorsements of both the Greens and the Social Democrats.
Yeah, and you wouldn't expect the Social Democrats' endorsements to be huge because they're just getting a foothold into the country. True. But it's simply straight up a loss.
You say that, but we've seen them doing very well in other seats tonight.
That is very, very
true.
true.
You might have expected, even in places where they haven't had big endorsement. You know, they came second in Lanarkshire with 130,000 votes without a single endorsement.
Okay. How do we work this out? Because Comped... Okay, so we have a declaration of a recount in Fife and the Forth Valley. That's the First Minister's seat. However, I'm going to need to do some messaging because we're messing up the schedule. Anyway, you want to talk to Doc for a little bit?
I just think...
Just on the declaration of recount of Fife and that is the seat of the First Minister. We're hearing rumours are that he's actually trailing in that seat. We're hearing that the Conservatives have a very narrow lead. That's the rumours on the ground. We'll have to wait and see what the results are. But we're hearing the First Minister is currently behind in Fife and the Forth Valley.
It says a lot about modern politics where you've got seats with this many people and somehow still they manage to get to recounts. I mean, read into that what you will. I'm just saying it's interesting.
Yes, it's an astute observation. What were you going to say before I brutally murdered you a minute ago?
I don't know now. It's a distant memory, like my time with the Liberal Democrats. It
was 2 days ago.
I mean, I've not been stabbed in the back like that from a friend since Twisted was my deputy. I mean,
Oh.
You see, I can do it too.
Yeah, but the difference is you're here to defend yourself. He isn't.
Get him on.
He said on Twitter he's in a field in the Isle of Wight, so I don't think he's...
We should bring in a new guest. We've not had anyone new for a while.
Yeah, go away, Doc.
And bring in somebody else.
Sure, it's up to you. You can move some people around whilst I do the result for South West Wales.
Well, I was going to say, let's bring in a Rich. We're expecting
Yes,
Wales.
Rich
That's
Tea
the
Biscuit,
candidate
chuck
there.
him in.
I actually don't have the power to do that. So you're
Oh,
gonna...
heartbreaking. Rich Tea Biscuit, you with us? The Labour candidate who has just held his seat in South West Wales, 199,882 votes to the
much better result for Labour.
to the 183,555 from the Welsh Liberal Alliance, 64,319 from the, I want to say, Home Secretary, and then 30,500. Shut up! Professionalism. I think Rich Tea Biscuit is back. Are you with us, Rich Tea Biscuit?
Can I give you the readout on percentages from South West Wales?
Quickly, because we've got another result.
41.1% of the vote. Labour, 37.74% for the Welsh Liberal Alliance, 13.22% at the LP UK, and Plaid Cymru are on 7.93.
Okay, we have a next result. Whilst we fix the issues with Rich Tea Biscuit, this is the Borders, and Paul Rand, the Scottish Conservative leader, has taken the Borders from Labour, 160,919 votes, with the LP UK and Liberal Democrats endorsements, and then the Classical Liberals in second, 121,226, and then Labour all the way down in third, 75,453.
Another terrible result for the Labour Party.
Okay, let's try again with Rich Tea Biscuit. Are you with
Can't
us?
understate how bad this has been for them so far.
Rich Tea Biscuit, are you with us?
Or overstate.
I am here.
How are you?
Oh, fine, thanks. How are you?
Very good. So you've just won your seat in South West Wales. How do you feel?
I am over the moon, to be honest. I've worked hard over the past few days, and it's good to see all the work verified by the ballot box.
Yeah, we have another result. This is round 10 from Northern Ireland.
It's all coming in thick and fast now.
Thick and fast after we heard the recount in Fife. This is two candidates elected this time, Sam IRL and Senarchos. I can't.
Senarchos.
Senarchos. Yes.
I've never been able to pronounce it.
Taking.
He was my deputy leader, and I've never been able to pronounce it.
Yeah, he's one of those ones that you just look at and go, "Yes, Sen."
I bet you're really rude to your deputy leaders, Will.
Well,
no, I would
cannot
never
comment
be my deputy leaders, Glenn.
editor of the Guardian. Yes, two candidates there from the Northern Ireland Labour Party, renamed from the SDLP, which I believe didn't really affect anything. It was just a name change.
No, I don't think so.
So yeah, two candidates from Labour elected. That means they have
Great
no
result for
candidates
Labour.
left, correct? So they've won all their candidates.
They won
So
by-
wait a minute, unless I'm wrong here, that means Labour are in the lead in Northern Ireland.
Technically, although
They're in the lead
In seats, they've got two and UUP have one, unless I'm
yes,
mistaken.
in this round,
yes,
but we've seen that
at the moment they're leading.
yes, but we've seen the UUP top round one, so we should expect some.
I'm under no disillusion that the UUP will win. I just think they've managed to get all these rounds, and Labour have beaten them. Even if it doesn't last, that's a hell of a blow to the UUP in Stormont.
I mean, as I noted earlier, it is the last election. P won all 5 of their seats in the first 3 rounds.
I mean, the Borders result we just saw, we got the Conservative Party winning not by a huge margin, even with their leader, with the endorsement of the Scottish Liberal Democrats, as well as their coalition partners in Westminster. We've seen the awful results in Wales, like in South West, where even with the endorsement of the Conservatives, Cthulhu couldn't win. This has been a huge blow to the governing parties. Obviously, Labour's done quite badly as well, but I would argue that because Labour's made such headway in Northern Ireland, which wasn't expected, really I think the big losers of tonight, although Labour haven't done amazingly, is the government. Both government parties, the Conservatives and the LP UK, are being decimated in all 3 of the elections.
Sorry, just a quick correction. It was expected that Labour would do this well. The exit had them rolling up until the start of the campaign, had them ahead of the Alliance Party.
Okay, we have the next result in Aberdeen. Now, this is a big seat. Well, you spoke about this in your Guardian article.
This is one of the ones to watch tonight.
Let's take a look. The Classical Liberals have held in Aberdeen. Tommy One Boys, 152,475 votes. Ife 123, former leader of the Scottish Conservatives, 111,424. Rich T Biscuit, who was just with us temporarily. Third place, 67,441, and H.K. Norman from the Social Democrats, 35,553. So the 4-horse race, and the Clibs managed to keep it. Percentages?
Percentages. Yes. I was very lax there. Aberdeen, percentages in Aberdeen, as the Classical Liberals have won 41.56% of the vote, the Conservatives 30.37%, Labour 18.38%, and the Social Democrats 9.69%. This was a 4-horse race last time. In November, there was just 8,000 votes separating the first and fourth place finishers. No such story tonight. One of the Social Democrats' poorer performances. It's still not bad, but compared to some of their other shock results tonight, they've done surprisingly well. This is towards the lower end of the scale. Another not great result for Scottish Labour. The orders of this haven't changed. The last time the Classical Liberals came top, the Conservatives second, and Labour in third. So that hasn't changed.
Yes. We have some tweets from the new Borders MSP and Scottish Conservative leader Paul Rand. My message of integrity, transparency and honesty has resounded with the people of the Borders. I will be proud to represent them. I'm just going to quickly scroll through. Tommy One Boys, before we go to the next thing. Very happy to be re-elected in Aberdeen. The people of Scotland are speaking tonight. They are crying out for change. Commiserations to all the candidates that ran good races.
I believe the Scottish Conservative leader Paul Rand is in the waiting room.
Ah! Paul Rand!
I believe this is a good time to say goodbye to C. Docra. Thank you very much.
You've been great, Doc, as always. Whether you're masquerading as Labour deputy leaders or bloody hell.
What are you trying to say?
Get out! Paul Rand, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, how are you? Are you good? Is everything... Yes.
Incredibly happy.
Yes, you just won your seat in Borders. How do you feel?
As well you should be.
Well, from what I'm hearing, it's looking incredibly good for the Scottish Conservatives across the country.
Here is confirmation of that recount in South of the Forth Valley from the Electoral Commission. Nothing of news there. So, Scottish Conservatives, you seem to be doing all right so far, huh?
Incredibly happy. We've seen a message of optimism and hope spread across the country. We've seen Ace do incredibly well in Aberdeen against a very, very strong candidate from the Classical Liberals. We've seen the recount where it's rumoured that we may be coming ahead of the First Minister with a candidate who isn't even the leader. We've won in the Borders. We've done incredibly well in Edinburgh. I'm incredibly happy with our whole results so far. And Sorry, what?
So I was just going to say, what do you think has led to... Why do you think the Scottish Conservatives are doing so well?
I think it's the fact that we are critical but compromising. I think it's the fact that we are giving such an optimistic and hopeful vision for what Scotland can really be. And it's the fact that when we say we are unionist, we're presenting a new message on unionism. We're not saying the dogmatic unionism of old. We're saying a unionism where, look, we want a union of benefits for Scotland, a union where people really engage with the culture through our cross-union travel scheme for young people, and many other schemes where we are really putting in the work to make sure that our Scottish people get a union of benefits.
What do you make of all the new this new hipster thing to do in Scottish politics, which is not talk about the union at all? We saw Labour do it a little bit with their coalition deal last term with the Greens, where they said don't stir the pot on the union. We've seen the Social Democrats be very as Will said, other, if you will. And then we've seen the Liberal Democrats not even mention the union in their manifesto. Hold that thought, because we have another result. South East Wales. Well, wow, Welsh Liberal Alliance gains from Plaid Cymru. Another massive flip. Plaid Cymru sitting on 4th, and Count Brandenburg, 142,089 votes. Zukov 236, 130,797 votes. Secretary Salami 115,741 votes, and then in last place, Jackal Manuki on 82,336.
Well,
Can I give you the percentages?
Yes.
Oh yeah, sure. I was going to make a comment on that.
The Welsh Liberal Alliance here have got 30.17% of the vote. The Conservatives narrowly losing out on 7% of the vote. Labour losing this seat. Oh no, sorry, this isn't their seat. No, this is Plaid Cymru. A bad result for Plaid Cymru though, 17.48%, and Labour on 24.58%. So Plaid Cymru now last in this seat.
I actually want to say that I outright reject what Docra was saying in the previous result. When you were saying that the results so far seem to be a rejection of the governing parties. What I see is the Scottish Conservatives excelling and much exceeding the expectations even I had. I see in Wales a party that didn't stand last term coming and making a real difference in votes. And I see in the UUP maybe underperforming. It's a bit too early to say, but I would say we're probably performing about an expectation. And in the face of a real vast amount of candidates. So I'm increasingly happy, and I think it's actually done us wonders. I think this election has shown that the governing parties do still command the confidence of the devolved assemblies.
Are you sure that the Scottish the Northern the UUP, the analysis of opinion polls in the first round would suggest that you've dropped 8% over the course of the campaign?
Hold that thought, because we have another result. Dramatic, as always. Dumbarton and Renfrew. Labour holds in Dumbarton and Renfrew. Oh, this is close. 185,149 votes. Two-horse race, and 157,719 for Tarkin. The LPUK being endorsed by the Clibs and the Scottish Conservatives, and Labour being endorsed by the Greens and Liberal Democrats.
Well, I have experience in this seat.
Yeah, let's get the percentages from our man with the numbers.
I'll go to the percentages in a second. I was just going to note that tonight is really a tale of two different sets of elections for Labour. In Northern Ireland, they're doing really well. In Scotland and Wales, they're doing really badly. This is going to be some welcome good news for them in Scotland, where they've lost. This will be the only of their three constituency seats that they actually hold at the end of tonight. They've lost the other two, Ayrshire and the Borders, and they have held on to this one with, in terms of percentages of the votes, they've got 54% to the LPUK's 46%.
Yeah, big hold for Labour there. I think that the LPUK really did think they had a chance of winning that seat.
Well, I think that shows that they did, but maybe they didn't capitalise upon it as much.
Yes, perhaps. Our next result will be in fact, this concludes.
Yes. The Borders list now.
So this concludes the lists for Strathclyde and the Borders. That's all the constituencies done. So they'll calculate the list for that, I believe, the bottom half of Scotland. Yes, I'm Scottish. I know this.
The borders is the bit that gives it away.
Yeah. Here it is now. Actually, I hope. No, it's not. Okay, that's round 12.
No.
Give us a second. Oh, he's done two. He's done two in the one. Okay. Strathclyde and the Borders. We have the Greens picking up a list, Labour picking up a list, the Classical Liberals picking up a list, and the Social Democrats picking up a list seat in Strathclyde and the Borders. We also have, I'll jump back and forth, don't worry, round 12 in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Jasmine has been excluded and DDYT has been elected. So let's jump back to Scotland first.
Just to interject, that means that Sinn Féin will only have one seat in the new Northern Irish Assembly, which means they've got the same number of seats as the IPP, which is a big result. The exit poll said that they would have two, but in the end they've only won a single seat.
I actually would like to congratulate the Scottish Social Democrats. That it's a shocking result, but it's really, I would say, an indictment of the Scottish Greens and perhaps even some of the unionist parties. But what I will say is that I think optimism seems to be overtaking pessimism in this election.
Yeah, sure. Let's jump back to the Scotland list then. Here it is. I didn't mess that up. So yes, Greens are picking up a seat, but again, the main story here must be that the ISD, the Social Democrats, have won a seat. Now, let's bring in some ISD guys, shall we? HK from the ISD and the Putis Power. Let's get them both on. Why not? Two candidates from the Social Democrats. What's
just
that?
Briefly before that Labour have now got their second seat tonight with Listy, Strathclyde and the Borders.
Ah, yes, and so you see in the top right there as well, the SSD, Clubs and Labour gaining from Greens, Conservatives and LP UK. Yes, we are joined by HK and the Put is Power from the Social Democrats. You guys have won your first seat in any election. How do you feel?
I'm on the verge of screaming my head off.
I am on the moon. I am absolutely on the moon.
Well, you should get some oxygen.
I think the phrase is over the moon, but that's how over the moon he is. He's crazy.
Well,
he's not quite over the moon. He's just on it, landed.
We have another result. This is, I want to say Highlands and Islands, actually. The recount of all recounted
results.
Here it is. The Liberal Democrats have won in the Highlands and Islands. 3,000 votes.
You can hear the excitement in his voice, can't you?
3,000 votes in it. Dokra,
I think
obviously,
he's on the moon as well.
Has gained
a nice round turnout of 80.
Yes, lovely. Have gained from the Greens 163,675 against 160,623, and the SSD on 57,611. I'm happy.
Would anybody like some percentages?
Yeah, woo!
Please give me some percentages.
The Liberal Democrats narrowly taking this seat with 42.86% of the vote. The Classical Liberals just at 0.8% behind on 42.06%, and the Scottish Social Democrats, I'm sure this will delight our new guests, 15.09% of the vote, which while they came last is a good result. 15.
It is better than I did.
It's like a last minute. You're like last minute going to go there. You weren't even going to stand there till the last minute, and you get 15%. It's very, very good for you guys. So we have the SSD over the moon. We have a Liberal Democrat over the moon. We have happy days, huh?
Sorry, my internet connection just dropped there, so sorry if I couldn't keep up with that discussion.
I was just saying
how
everyone
been a rejection of two-party politics.
Yes, that's a great point.
Rejection of two-party politics.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I'll be a bit of a pessimist. I didn't expect the SSDs to get any seats tonight, so this has been quite the shock, a happy shock, but it should also be a warning sign to Greens and Classical Liberals. You know, you need to sort your stuff out. We need to stop about the union and get on with real shit. Apologies, Ofcom, but that's it.
Oh, we're so gonna get fined.
I mean, I just going
I'll try and pay your fine, lads, but
just going on from what Putis was saying was that as I made clear in my interview with Will, that this is basically the non-independent selection, and it shows that the approach that we have taken in Labour to be the designated other is resounding with the people of Scotland.
Yeah. That rejection of two-party politics, how long do we see this lasting?
If we can keep momentum up, I would be incredibly surprised if we didn't win at least a handful of seats at the next general election. We are very optimistic about our chances going forward, and I think that this is showing that the people are disappointed with the two-party system and are yearning for something different.
I think the battleground is going to shift from Greens and Classical Liberals to really all over the place. I'm not sure how Scottish Labour feel about the results tonight, but I think I think they should start playing their cards around. We could see quite a shift in politics.
Should Labour fear that?
I kind of started talking about before realising the HK covers everything, so, oh well.
You guys are bouncing off each other so well.
do these results mean that Labour should fear the Social Democrats?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they should, just saying from my perspective.
Oh, fear in politics,
I mean,
that's
this
very
isn't
bad.
to say we're not against a few electoral pacts if the numbers work out right, but we would rather get rid of the Greens, and Scottish Labour want the Greens in power, so no thanks there.
But Labour should view this as a challenge to their dominance of the main centre-left force, because the Social Democrats, we're doing well where Labour aren't doing so well. We're consistent in our messaging. We're consistently active, and I think the more we keep going at it, the less and the more people are going to switch from Labour to the Social Democrats. I mean, I guess I'm biased in saying that because I was quite a high-profile defection from the Labour Party to the Social Democrats, but I genuinely believe that we are posing a credible threat to the Labour Party's dominance of the left in this country.
We have another result. This is Mid and West Wales.
Hey.
The Conservatives have gained from the Welsh Liberal Alliance, PGR. Alright, calm down. PGR 10, 179,781 with an LP UK endorsement. First Minister Wagbo on 141,786, and the leader of
seating
Plaid Cymru 141,786. This is pretty big. Well, Shakespeare.
That's a massive result for the Conservatives. Terrible result for the Alliance. Saying earlier on in the night that this was a referendum on the Welsh Liberal Alliance government and on Wagbo. And while it seems in much of Wales that people have cast a favourable opinion on the government, in Wagbo's own constituency, they've not cast a very favourable opinion on him. In terms of percentages, sorry, I'll just read out the percentages and you can jump in. Wagbo has won just 30.6% of the vote here, the same as the Plaid Cymru leader, and the Conservatives have won 38.8% of the vote here.
Can I just come back to what C. Docker was saying earlier?
Oh, here we go again.
And also, what what's his name? Jellicow was saying on Twitter to me. We have seen not a rejection of the governing parties, but a huge endorsement, especially shown by this result, where the First Minister and popular figure, former Prime Minister even, completely just unseated by a strong Conservative candidate.
You can hear the joy in his voice.
Now remember, of course, there will be list seats in Wales, so it's not like, you know, if the Welsh Liberal Alliance gets a list seat, then expect Wagbo to be on the top of that list.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Our
Although
next
this
result.
is still a pretty big blow for the WLA.
Yes. Actually, we don't need to wait for this because this is the combined constituencies, so there's no change here. This is just showing you the map of Wales in the constituencies. So, as it stands before the lists, this is why I put this before the list, because I think it makes it more exciting. The Welsh Liberal Alliance are with 3 seats. Welsh Conservatives on 1, Welsh Labour on 1. And that is before we see the list.
And can I, before we go to lists, can I just talk about the changes last time?
Absolutely.
Constituencies. North Wales, the Liberals hold on to that. Mid and West Wales, the Conservatives take that from Wagbo and the the Welsh Liberal Alliance. Labour hold on to South West Wales. The Liberal Alliance takes South Central Wales, and the Liberal Alliance takes South East Wales from Plaid. So overall, the Welsh Liberal Alliance actually are up 1 in terms of constituencies from last time. But of course, you know, it'll be a massive blow to them losing their leader. The Labour Party are down 1, Conservatives up 1, and Plaid Cymru lose their only constituency.
We do not need to wait any longer for the list seat results. Here they are. Welsh Liberal Alliance with 1, Plaid Cymru with 2. So, that gives us...
Do we know who that is for the Welsh Liberal Alliance?
Well, you would expect it to be Wagbo. It's a list, so the parties will have their own list and they will choose the candidates. That gives us the final results in Wales, which is this. The Welsh Liberal Alliance are on 4 seats, Plaid Cymru on 2, Welsh Conservatives on 1, Welsh Labour on 1, and the Libertarian Party of Wales on 1. So, despite Wagbo losing their seat in the first past the post, they still have a strong showing.
can I quickly mention the fact that this is a complete reversal of what we expected in relation to Plaid Cymru and the Labour Party. Plaid have massively outperformed the polls. They still drop one seat. They go from 3 to 2. But we expected that they would be below Labour. They'd be on 2 and be below Labour. The poll suggested they'd be on 21%. So they're still lower than the poll suggested, but they've outperformed the Labour Party when it was expected the Labour Party would outperform them.
Considering
The
they were
Labour
in
Party,
government.
yeah, and the Labour Party have now gone down from 2 to 1 seats, which is very different to what we expected. And they've overall, rather than the 22% of the vote that was expected they'd win, they won just 13.97%. There's no overstating that is a terrible result for Labour. They're behind the Conservatives now, who didn't even stand last time.
Okay, let's get some closing thoughts from our three in the studio. First of all, Rand, this is the final result for Wales. How do you make of it?
Well, I see the Welsh Conservatives have gained a seat, and I see that we unseated a sitting First Minister, that Welsh Labour has fallen, and that Plaid Cymru is completely a shadow of its former self. I think what we're seeing here is that the governing parties went from 0 to 2 in a typically left-wing area. What we are seeing here is that the governing parties have a resounding mandate.
And from the Social Democrats, before we chuck you all out?
I'm incredibly happy with the results that we've seen in Scotland. I am deeply, I offer my deepest congratulations to Saunders, our leader, for gaining a seat on the Southern list. Sorry. I'm also incredibly proud of Saunders for retaining his seat in Wales. I'm proud of. While a bittersweet night for the Welsh Liberal Alliance in Wales, I do hope they continue to affect the positive change that they have been doing in Wales for the foreseeable future.
I have nothing really to add to that other than more Ofcom violations.
Well,
Really
just before I go, if what is being said about 5 from the Full Valley is true, and that the Scott Greens are under attack from the Conservatives, I think that's another rejection of unionist, nationalist and unionist policy. Although, Conservatives are unionists. It depends how well I do, but
all right,
considering
okay.
I was
Okay.
down in North Shields.
Right, thank you to HK and the Put is Power from the Social Democrats and Paul Rand, the leader of the Scottish Conservatives. We have another result. This is round 14 of the Northern Ireland Assembly. 2 candidates from the UUP elected and 1 excluded. Will, you want to talk about that? Whilst I bring in our next guest. This is the First
What am I
Minister.
talking about?
Northern Ireland 14.
Northern Ireland 14.
But before we do, we have our next guest, the leader of the Scottish Greens and First Minister of Scotland. Al, are you with us?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you very much.
got
Now, Will is going to
your
talk
result.
about... Yes, we're going to talk about round 14 in Northern Ireland.
Round 14. So the UUP have picked up 2 more seats, and they've also had a candidate excluded. So Le Chevalier Malfait and Leafy Emerald have both picked up a seat, while Amber Rudd has been excluded from the contest on round 13.
Yes.
Le Chevalier Malfait won 79,919 votes. Leafy Emerald, former Prime Minister, 74,730, topping this round. The Alliance reaching the top 5 for the first time, actually, with 51,059 for the classical Liberal leader, Twisted Nuke.
So as it stands, the Labour Party are on 2, the UUP are on 3, the IPP are on 1. There are still 5 seats to go, and if you're one who has beady-eyed of us, you'll see that there are 5 candidates remaining, so no spoilers there. Al, how are you?
Well, I'm fine. At least so far.
Yes, the real crunch time is coming down in Scotland. We have a couple of minutes until our next result, which is actually your seat. Now, if you were watching, you will have known that there was a recount in your seat. And
Yeah. I've heard about that.
Yes, we shall see what happens, and then we will have the Highlands, Tayside, and Fife list, which will give us our complete results in Scotland. So I hope you can stay for that. However, do you think? Well, I guess how to frame this. Are you happy with the Greens' record in government so far?
In total or during my term?
In total.
Well, I think that managing to lead a country for like how many elections have there been? This is the fifth one, right? So like leading the country for like 4 general elections, going to fifth. Like if you look in, I've seen some model worlds on Reddit, and people like the parties that are in the government for a long while, they tend to do like worse and worse in elections. I think that's a trend that we've also seen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the politics are bad, just that people want a change because they don't like think that same old thing is the best always. While I do.
Yeah, there's always that kind of once a party gets in government so many times, the voters just sometimes want a change. However, you could still be in Butte House, you could still be First Minister. We don't know yet. We still have two, I believe. Or nice one, Al. Are you multitasking here? Jesus.
Yes.
Yes. So we have Fife, and then that will give us our final result. That will be coming shortly. Well, anything to add before we go to that?
I was just going to say, repeat what we said earlier, which is that we're hearing rumours that the Conservatives were leading in Fife and the Forth Valley, very narrowly leading before the recount. We'll see what the recounted results show us.
Poor Al is on the text screen and on the stream with us. What a guy.
Yeah, I'm live tweeting right now.
Well, here is your result from Fife in the Forth Valley. You have managed to hold the seat by 2,000 votes. 194,047 for you, and 192,291 for Le Chevalier Malfait from the Scottish Conservatives. I nailed it, didn't I? And 52,682.
Proper flair.
You know, just don't take it to heart that the Lib Dems endorse the Tories. I'm joking.
Well, I mean, like my fellow friends in government, like I saw Sanik and Jimmy and MG win all their seats, but they have like endorsements. I had non-endorsements and we're up against this. I looked at the endorsement and I was like, well, this is gonna be a hard campaign. Apparently, it worked out in the end, but
yes, it did work out, and that gives us a little bit of time to work out the Highlands, Tayside, and Fife.
Can I give you percentages for Fife and the Forth Valley?
Go for it, whilst the screen shows, because I already clicked it.
The Greens are on 44.2% in Fife and the Forth Valley, the Tories on 0.8%, and the Social Democrats on 12%. Another great result for them.
Thank you very much. Now we have the regional list votes for Highlands, Tayside, and Fife. The Classical Liberals have picked up 2, the Greens have picked up 1, and the Tories have picked up 2. So, that's Scotland, isn't it? Yes, so we'll jump a little bit ahead because, yes, we can jump a little bit ahead. So, here's the combined constituency votes, constituencies only. The Greens are on 4, the Classical Liberals are on 2, the Tories, Labour, and the LP UK and the Liberal Democrats are on 1. We have the regionals combined. Combined, the Greens are on 2, the Classical Liberals are on 3, the Tories are on 2, Labour are on 1, and the Social Democrats are on 1. And that gives us the final national result in Scotland. The Greens are the largest party with 6, Classical Liberals are second with 5, Scottish Conservatives are on 3, Scottish Labour are on 2, Scottish Libertarians, Social Democrats, and Liberal Democrats are all on 1. So, there we go, got there in the end. You still are the largest party.
indeed, we are.
Are you glad?
Of course. How could I be anything other than happy? Like the exit poll showed that we would drop even more seats, so only dropping 2. Well, it might sound bad that we only dropped 2. I think it's good that we only dropped 2 because, to be honest, it could have been even worse if you looked at what's been going around media for the past weeks and stuff like that. So, of course, I'm very happy, and we're looking forward to using our seats well in the Hollywood Parliament, despite if it's in government or opposition, we'll see about that.
Yes,
Regardless, I'm happy to have served
I think
as.
what is going to be so key in Scotland is the coalition forming period. You could argue that the Libertarians, the Social Democrats, and the Liberal Democrats are all kingsmakers for the next First Minister of Scotland. Social Democrats, Saunders was very vocal on Twitter that if he could avoid it, he would avoid the Scottish Greens in a deal unless the Libertarians are involved. So say the Classical Liberals and the Libertarians make a deal, then the Social Democrats would prefer the Greens. It's all up in the air, is what I'm trying to say. Nobody really knows. But looking at the maths, 6 and 2 makes 8, and then you could go Social Democrats and Lib Dems to put the Greens in office, or you could go 5 and 3 with the Lib Dems and the Scottish Conservatives, which makes 8, and then you could go Libertarians and Lib Dems, which makes 10 as well. Either Dunks
It could
or
go
Al
either way.
could be First Minister. And again, just before we go into any further detail, these graphics are amazing. Shout out to Geordie who did the graphics.
Yes, it's a great job.
Lovely map. I mean, that big fat splodge of orange is just beautiful. But yes, great graphics as always. And that is our results in Scotland. We have our results in Wales. We are waiting for
I believe
our
we've got-
final result in Northern Ireland, which will come shortly, and then that'll be it. Sorry, you were saying something, Will.
Was it not? When is round 16 in?
Round 16 will be next. Yes.
Is
it'll
it
be...
60? How many rounds are there?
Oh, it's now, I think. Oh.
I believe 16 is the final round.
Yes,
It should be
16 is the final. Oh no, that's the national result. So we've still got a little bit until the round 16 comes, and that will give us our final results for the devolved elections. So, how do you feel now that you see the whole picture in Scotland? Who are you first of all looking to work with? I would assume it's Scottish Labour.
Yeah, well, I think that the traffic light coalition that fell apart in Westminster doesn't necessarily have to mean that a traffic light coalition in Scotland wouldn't be possible, because I think that the Scottish parties of the traffic light coalition have had a better, they've been better on cooperating with each other compared to the Westminster. The reasons to that could be many, but I think that a TLC coalition would be preferable. If possible, in any way. And I also think that if we remain in government, we shouldn't remain in government on our own, but rather with other parties as well. Because
yes.
we would need that.
Because, of course, last term you were the cabinet, the Greens were the cabinet on their own with the CNS deal with Labour. Now, of course, TLC will not get you over the line, though. You will need the Social Democrats.
Yes.
How, if you were to try and convince a Social Democrat to pick the Greens over the Classical Liberals, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I'm a Social Democrat myself. That's nothing I'm going to lie about. I think that Social Democrat, that ideology is the best one. So, I think we could probably agree on a lot of things. Yeah, I also have promised to try to make up a better cabinet if I get elected again. That will turn out even more. And as I said before, if we do make a coalition, I think that other parties should be in government as well, not in just confidential supply. Because one of the problems we had was that were unable to sack ministers or cabinet secretaries due to the fact that we lacked people. We would need even more people even more competences across parties to be able to form a government that actually is able to turn out, because this is a problem we've had now for the past term, and I think that's something we really need to work out.
Well, the Scottish Social Democrats have beat the Lib Dems in number of votes.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
Indeed,
pretty crazy.
In terms of, they beat them in terms of both list votes and constituency. They got Social Democrats 9% of constituency votes to the Liberal Democrats 6.59, and in terms of the list, which is a much fairer way of gauging across the country anyway, the Social Democrats have got 7.19% to Liberal Democrats 6.5. Considering the Social Democrats at the start of the campaign were polling at, I think it was about 1.6%, that is a massive increase. to leapfrog over the Liberal Democrats, and goes to show what an excellent campaign they fought here.
We have some tweets from MG. In fact, no, we don't. We have a result. Round 16 of the Northern Ireland Assembly gives us the final candidates. Now, as you can see at the bottom, there's a little explanatory note that we'll go into, but Twisted Nook, Count Brandenburg, Paul Rand, and Comrade Lannister have all been elected as the final 4 candidates being elected. Yes, there were 4 seats left. That gives us the final assembly. And yes, that explanatory note there, all the remaining candidates are elected. Although, of course, Zygarde was excluded in round 15.
Which means that the Alliance Party have won 2 seats, the same number as Labour, and the UUP remain on.
Yes, the UUP remain on 5. And this is the final result in Northern Ireland. 5 Ulster Unionists, 2 Alliance, 2 Labour, 1 Sinn Féin, and 1 IPP, which means that if you were to talk about the largest nationalist grouping in terms of seats, they're equal.
In terms of votes, Sinn Féin got slightly more. I think it's worth noting at this point, I know that the plus and minuses don't actually add up. That's because there are now 11 new Stormont Assembly, whereas there were only 9 at the last election.
Thank you for explaining that.
So there are an extra 2 seats.
I think that, well, okay, so there were extra seats, but the Ulster Unionists were even, so you could take that, you could spin that to a loss, is what I'm trying to say. Perhaps.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, for Sinn Féin, that's not a good result. They are now at the next election. They're going to they might have a real challenge on their hands for being the largest, the most popular nationalist party. But it's a great result for the IP.
So that is our final result. Look at this lovely little graphic with word art and everything on the bottom. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I was going to say for our last couple of minutes, should we get one of the Dems in the waiting?
Yes, we can go as long as you like. I mean, we were going to end at past, but we could go over. I mean, who cares?
Well, yeah, we can continue asking people.
Let's just drag everyone in. There's 3 people here. See who opens their mouth first.
This is going to turn into chaos, I'm sure. But
absolute chaos. We'll leave it with that for now. Joining us in the studio with the First Minister, quote unquote, we'll see, is Vlad the Lad from the Liberal Democrats. Zukov236, who is his microphone is turned off, and El Raymondo from the Liberal Democrats. Ray, Vlad, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Good result in Northern Ireland for Alliance. Sadly, I didn't get elected, but yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good night in general. Hello.
Hello, I'm sorry if I interrupted you.
It's all good.
It's fine. It's been an all right night so far, I reckon.
Well, that's it. This is your results.
Yeah.
So actually, whilst you guys are here, let's scroll through the results country by country whilst you guys are here. You can walk it through with us. First of all, Zukov, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm great. The Welsh Conservatives have done an extraordinary job. We're now, I think, the second largest party in terms of popular vote in Wales. So, I mean, it's sad that we didn't get a second seat, but the fact that we've come out of nothing. We've come out of dust, and we're now the second largest party in Wales. So I think we've done an extraordinary job, and I'd like to thank the people of Wales who, made this accomplishment happen for us.
Okay, in Wales, the final result, let's talk about Wales first. Liberal Alliance set to retain the First Minister status, if you will. Ray, you happy to see that the Liberal Alliance have held in Wales?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to see that. I am slightly disappointed about the, I believe it's South and Central seat that the Welsh Commons took, since that is part of my Westminster constituency. But I am rather happy in general, yes.
And Vlad as well, are you happy to see the Welsh Liberal Alliance are staying strong?
Yeah, it's really good to see, although it was a shame about Wagvo losing his seat in Mid-Wales, although he has got his list seat, so yeah, it's a good result in Wales for the country as a whole.
Can I just quickly give the national percentage for the Welsh vote? I believe we've had them earlier, but now's to remind us all. The Welsh Liberal Alliance got 53.52%. The Plaid Cymru came second on 18.69. The Conservatives came third on 16.25. Labour on 13.97, and the LPUK on 7.57%.
Thank you very much. And Zukov, the Welsh Conservatives have a seat. So you said that the Welsh Conservatives did amazingly. Do you think that the Welsh Conservatives will be the opposition that the people of Wales need?
Yeah, I think. Well, look, we'll have to see. We'll have to see what comes out. What comes out of the coalitions and things like that. But I think we're definitely an emerging force in Wales. Plaid Cymru and Scotland and Welsh Labour have really fallen back this election. Plaid Cymru. I don't know if many people remember this, but back in the day, they had 4 out of the 5 seats in Wales. They were the dominant party. They were the party in Wales, and now we are on the rise. So I'm very happy about that.
Okay. Sorry. Well, do you want to jump to the next country?
I was just going to say. I've been comparing the figures time to time. The Welsh Liberal Alliance, despite the poll suggesting they were going to slide, have actually increased their vote share from last time. Last time they got 41.69% of the vote. This time they got 43.52%, which is a small increase, but an increase nonetheless. Labour had a drop. They went quite a significant drop, 18.93% last time to 13.97% this time. Plaid Cymru, another big drop, but a smaller drop than the polls had indicated. Well, no, actually, it was a bigger result. They actually were still larger than Labour were.
Yeah.
They went from 27.02% last time to 18.69% this time. The Conservatives had nothing last time. We all remember they didn't stand any candidates, so they're up actually nominally 16.25%.
Okay, let's jump to the next.
PGR did a so-called pro-gamer move against Wagbo when it took off him. I think that's pretty interesting.
A pro-gamer move. Okay,
yeah.
Let's jump to the next country that we have. The stupid Windows sound. Scottish Parliament fact. Shut up. Okay, so this is Scotland. As we were talking about with Al, the Greens are on 6, Classical Liberals are on 5, Scottish Tories are on 3, Labour 2, Lib Dems, Social Democrats, Lib Dems are on 1. Let's start with Zukov. The Scottish Conservatives are now the 3rd largest party, or still? I can't remember. Still, I think. Under
the
Paul
Scottish Conservatives are now the 3rd largest.
No, thank you. And the Classical Liberals are now on 5. How do you feel? Oh, he's engaging on a Twitter war whilst we're on air.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your question.
We're talking about Scotland. The
okay.
Scottish Conservatives with a relatively decent result.
Oh yeah. The Scottish Conservatives have had quite a good result. I'm not gonna go out here and say what it was like double the amount of the expectations. But we gained in Scotland. We've gained in Wales. We held even in Northern Ireland. Although to be fair, they expanded seats there. So I think it's generally a good result for the Conservatives overall. So I think we've also saw. Oh, sorry. I think we also saw a very good result for the Scottish Conservatives in Tayside and Fife, I believe. That was the First Minister's seat. We almost took that. So I think we've had a very decent set of results.
Vlad, the Lib Dems have picked up a seat.
3.
Whoa!
Sorry, I didn't
The Scottish Lib Dems have picked up a seat in Scotland, in Holyrood. Are we happy to see that the Liberal Democrats have representation in Holyrood again?
Yeah, that's really great. It's an improvement, and let's hope we can use it, going down the road to pick up more representation in Holyrood. And I think it has been a fairly good night for the Lib Dems overall. We've gained in Northern Ireland. We've retained power in Wales. So yeah, it's looking really optimistic for both Scotland and all of the devolved areas.
And
if I may quickly, if you want to bring in somebody else to talk about Scotland first, I'll then say what I.
Yes, I was going to say let's talk about Scotland a little bit more. The Greens are still the largest party, but are you worried about the rise in opposition? It seems like the opposition are picking up.
well, well, of course, it's always better to have like a big support, but I don't think that like it could have been major losses to like other ideologies. But I think that Liberal Democrats and the Social Democrats, I think we probably lost most votes to them. I think they are still pretty close to like our ideology, and we could probably work with them. So, like, at least the voters haven't spread across like other ideologies, and I think that's very important. But of course, it's not very positive that we have lost a lot of seats. But as I said before, it could have been really worse.
Yeah, and to kind of, I guess, take the position of the classical liberals, they will be super chuffed with the results. You know, if I were Dunks, I would really consider not working with the Libertarian Party because of how toxic they are currently. And I think that you saw on Twitter yesterday, Saunders was very clear he wouldn't work with Libertarians. And I think that's something that is probably shared across many parties. But that's the thing. The Libertarians aren't necessarily needed to put Dunks in Butte House. They need, hypothetically, the Social Democrats, the Conservatives, and the Lib Dems. It's scary times. Who knows what's going to happen? You know, if Dunks was here, I would have said to him, last election, he said that we should be packing our bags in Butte House, and the Greens got elected again. But this time, we could be seeing the removal vans back in Edinburgh. Scary times.
It's interesting.
Sorry, you were saying? Okay, we'll go to Will. You were going to talk about...
I think Zukov was saying something.
You knew it.
Saying something for
brutal.
a minute.
Sorry. My bad.
My
bad.
Cut him off mid-flow.
My bad.
You're that bored.
No, I
Let's
didn't
go
mean
to percentages instead.
Percentages are more interesting than you, Zukov. No, sorry.
Yeah, no,
I'll let Zukov finish what he was going to say.
Yes.
No,
My
it's fine,
apologies.
it's fine.
On you go, Zukov. On you go.
It's fine. So this is the really messy part because I think if the LPUK had gotten two seats, then it would have basically been over. The fight for Boot House would have been over. But now it's like you're seeing completely different picture emerge because of the Scottish Social Democrats.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's I'm personally friends with the leader of Scottish Social Democrats. I'm happy that they did well. And I think you're going to see a lot of changes this term because of how fragmented Holyrood is. And I think just one seat made the difference.
Yeah. Crazy times.
If we look at the change in vote shares in terms of the list from the last election, what the big story becomes clear, which is the massive drop that the Greens have suffered in this election. At the last election, in terms of list votes, they won 37.1% of the vote. At this election, they were down to 26.4% of the vote in terms of list votes. That's a drop of very nearly 11%, which is a big difference. On the other hand, the classical liberals, their gain is actually very, very small in comparison. They've gone from 20.89% last time to 24.64% last time, which is still an increase, and they're quite close to the Greens. But in comparison to that massive drop for the Green Party, the other big story was the drop for the Labour Party. They went from 19.11% last time to just 10.5% this time. That's an almost 9% drop. And the Libertarians remain broadly the same. The Liberal Democrats are up by about 3 points, and the Conservative Party are up by about 5%. Of course, the other big story was the Social Democrats, who were up from 0 last time to 7.19% this time. So, on the basis of those changes, the stories of the selection become clear. The Greens down massively, the classical Liberals up slightly, the Conservatives up again by a medium amount, Labour down massively, Liberal Democrats up slightly, BLP UK about the same, and a massive result for the Social Democrats.
And I think the last thing I'll say about this is that during the election time, there was a lot of change of leadership in the Scottish Labour Party. And, I can speak because this is kind of, I guess, leaking, but during, the deals and the endorsement process, it's difficult to work with a party going through a leadership election. So
absolutely.
maybe that played on it. There's a sense of chaos throughout the electorate. We'll see. Let me chuck Vlad back in since I'm getting spammed.
It was thought that Labour would drop 1 seat to 3 to tie with the Tories. In the end, they lost half their MSPs.
Okay.
Yeah, I think ultimately this sort of look. I think it's a mix. I'm not going to say this is a triumph for any side. I don't think the government massively gained any, or the opposition massively gained. But Labour's fall in everywhere except Ireland is pretty precipitous, right? And I think it's really just a sign that people are tired. And I think Labour Party's going to have to look at that, and they're going to have to think about what their next path is, because if they keep going on this path, they're just going to keep disintegrating in mainland in Great Britain.
Labour should fear the Social Democrats. I think that's a clear result.
Yeah. Let's jump to...
The Social Democrats are just now 3 points behind Labour in terms of list votes in Scotland.
It shows quite a few if you centre-left voters are rejecting the kind of new...
apparently they want social democracy, but they just are shifting who are going to bring that social democracy.
Yeah.
And I think one of the big factors there, sorry, just quickly,
of course.
One of the big factors, of course, was the performance of the government, which is that a lot of voters who are maybe centre-left, who are disillusioned with how the Greens have been doing and think that Labour is just another vote for another 6 months of Green government, went for the Social Democrats.
That being said, I don't think that it's only the fact that they're supporting governments. A lot of Labour MSPs have been pretty inactive in Parliament as well, and I think that this has also shown a lot in polls. So I think that the confidence of supply may be not that effective, because they also have made some pretty clear statements about they won't support another government unless we sag some ministers, and I think that's fine. They have to show up to Parliament as well.
Yes, thank you very much for that lovely insight on Scotland. Let's jump now to the final result in Northern Ireland. Now, not much surprise, but also a lot of surprise. We see the Irish Parliamentary Party getting an MLA, but we also see the Ulster Unionists staying on 5. Well, the national percentages.
For Northern Ireland.
Please.
Is that what we're...
After that stupid Windows sound.
Okay, the results, the national percentages, we'll go by first round results, because that's the most accurate reflection of how voters were thinking. And I think the big story is the drop. Well, one of the big stories is the Ulster Unionists. At the last election, they won. I think it was nearly 50% in the very first round. This time round, it's 39.23%, which is a big drop over the course of the campaign, with opinion polls just before the campaign saying they were on about 47%. I think that has been mostly the benefit of the Alliance Party, who've surged over the campaign from 14% in the polls before the campaign to now have polled 18.07%, just marginally behind the Labour Party, whereas the poll suggests they'd be five points down. Sinn Féin as well, really suffering, of 12.56%, just above the Irish Parliamentary Party, got 9.62%, and I think they will be the most happy of any party here for getting their first seat. Of course, the Labour Party, first time they've ever won a second seat in the Stormont Assembly, and it's under their new name as well. They were the SDLP, and this time they are the Labour Party.
What do you think Sinn Féin has to do to get up there with the likes of the Alliance Party and Labour Party? For anyone, well, perhaps.
Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say I'm not convinced Sinn Féin are going to be able to come back from. There's a part of me that thinks that this is the beginning of a terminal decline now. The Irish Parliamentary Party, when they're brand new, to only narrowly be behind Sinn Féin and to have the same number of seats is a terrible result for Sinn Féin. They're gonna need to really look at the way they conduct themselves. There's been a lot of criticism about the way they've acted in government as part of the executive, as well as accusations of sectarianism, such as that terrible advert during the campaign, the one that used the pro-IRA song. They're going to need to to really look at the way they conduct themselves in Stormont and the way they use imagery such as that. I would think now what's going to happen is that the IPP are going to be invited into the new executive because Sinn Féin is seen as being somewhat toxic and being somewhat incompetent by many in Northern Irish politics, which will be another blow for Sinn Féin if they haven't got a platform of being in government.
Zukov.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can I?
think.
Oh.
Sorry, go ahead. No, please.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I think actually the result for Sinn Féin is fairly bad for them, and it shows mainly they need to distance themselves from sectarian violence. And actually, the result as a whole is mainly.
Oh, he's gone. Rip.
He's gone. That was very sudden.
Ouch. Yeah.
The results as a whole. You're probably going to say, "Oh, he's back.
So
he's back." Hold on.
sad.
We've gone back. Sorry, Vlad. You were saying about the results as a whole. There.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for that. But yeah, as I was saying, they need to distance themselves. It's clear that the way that they have conducted themselves throughout the campaign and throughout Stormont, as Will has said, just wasn't popular with voters. I think mainly more moderate nationalist voters who don't condone these actions. So yeah, Zukov.
Yeah, thank you. I personally, well, here's the interesting thing, right? We've seen nationally the Greens, and I know this is going to sound related. The Greens nationally have been on downward spiral, right? The Green Left movement, or whatever you call it.
Good shit. The Imperial Left.
And they're the main national force, sort of, in national, right? So I think that's sort of translated a bit. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Féin is the Green sort of branch in Northern Ireland, right?
Yeah, you would say so.
Yeah. And they've gone down. Plaid definitely Greens, but they are a nationalist party and have somewhat similar views to the Greens, and they've also gone down. You've seen the Scottish Greens, although they have gotten 6 seats, they did go down 2 seats, right? They did lose seats. So I think, in general, this has been a bad night for sort of the ideological nationalist parties. I think a lot of the IPP obviously performed well. No one can deny that. So I think obviously that the ideological nationalists have been falling, and it's just a continuation of that spiral.
Ray, are you still with us?
I am still with you, yes.
I was just going to ask, you stood as a candidate for the Scottish Liberal Democrats later, and not to jump back to Scotland too much, but who would you want to see the Liberal Democrats work with in Scotland?
Well, I think I made that clear during the election. I would prefer to see a Dunk's First Minister with us either coalitioning or competence and supplying the classical Liberals.
And Al, as someone who has worked with the TLC government before, how does it make you feel that some members in the Liberal Democrats actually support Dunks over you?
Yeah, well, I mean, Ray didn't win the Liberal Democrat leadership election, so I think that there's probably a better consensus in the party for supporting us than Ray has. Or something along those lines. Like, of course, not good that some of the members doesn't feel like they want to support us, but on the other hand, I haven't seen Ray around much in Scotland, while I've seen you, the leader of the Liberal Democrats, more, and you and I know each other. So, like, in those terms, it feels very hard to describe, but you understand sort of what I mean.
Yes, there is, hopefully, you believe, more in common with the Greens than the classical Liberals. You hope. Obviously, it's up to the membership. We will see what happens. There's a lot of things to come. I'm going to thank our guests for joining us, and then Will and I will just close off. So thank you, Al, the soon-to-be, or maybe not to be, continuing First Minister of Scotland. Raymondo, El Raymondo, the opposition chief whip, and Zukov, and Vlad the Lad. Zukov, the leader of Welsh Conservatives, and Vlad the Lad, a prominent Liberal Democrats. Thank you.
Thank you.
So there we are. That's all the results are in.
Yes. So how do you make of it? Let's just close off kind of casually. How do you make of the night so far?
Well, the thing that strikes me the most, it might not be necessarily the biggest story, but the thing that strikes me the most is the terrible result for the Labour Party.
Bias.
In everywhere except for Northern Ireland. They've lost half their seats in both Scotland and Wales. They went from 4 in Scotland to 2, and 2 in Wales to 1. They are now behind the Conservatives and Plaid Cymru in terms of the vote in Wales, and behind the Conservatives in terms of the vote in Scotland.
Expect a Guardian article soon. I think that's us.
Yes, I will be. My plan for the next week is I'm going to hopefully publish a summary of the results this evening. I will be doing a lot of investigating over the next couple of days to talking to people on and off the record and finding out why these results came to pass, what the inside story is.
Don't expect any
and
leaks from
why they
me.
happened.
Otherwise, I'll get expelled.
Sea Doctor is the example, and also I will be doing an investigative piece to look into whether after these results, Welsh Labour should now, not Welsh Labour, Labour in general should now fear the Social Democrats.
That is us. Thank you very much for joining us from Will Shakespeare and myself, Weebrew. Good night.
Thank you very much. It's been a good night.